Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're going to discuss about the multitude of curious or strange things orchids can do. Now we all know they can surprise us, but what is the extent of the strange things they can do? Well, as I've discovered, it's pretty much limitless. Now I did at least one video regarding the subject, but as it just so happens, I observe more and more strange things with my orchids. So I decided to start a series, but if you missed the video I'm talking about, I'll link you down below so you can see some really funny or strange things my orchids did in the past. But today we have some new subjects. So let's take a look at them. From now on, I'm gonna document everything that is out of the norm or unusual with my orchids, just so you know for the future maybe what things orchids can do, so you don't freak out. So first, let's start with a Cattleya orchid. We might already know that there are multiple types of Cattleyas. Some produce a sheath, some produce buds directly from the new pseudobulbs, and a few species even put out spikes from the base of the pseudobulb. In the case of Cattleyas which produce sheaths, pretty much buds develop inside, then they start to emerge from the top, and in a while they open. What's strange about my Cattleya is that she started to open this bud while it was in the sheath. Now at first I thought there are multiple buds developing in the sheath, but no. There is actually a bud, and as you can see, it's already starting to unfurl. Now this is a bit problematic because the sheath actually doesn't let it completely open. So what I will have to do right now is do a little bit of surgery and remove this sheath. It has no purpose anymore. It already took care of the bud as it was forming. All it's doing right now is impairing the bud from opening. Now speaking about this, I'll link you down below to a video in which yet again I had to cut the sheath because it was just so strong that the buds could not get out of it. But this is an entirely different case. A bud that's trying to open within the sheath is really uncommon for Cattleya orchids, and this is not supposed to happen. This orchid has bloomed successfully in the past. I've never had this happen with this Cattleya. But this year we have a little problem. If you remember, I used to use clay pots. Now as the orchids grew and started to develop a bigger and bigger root system and also multiple structures, they also started to consume more water. And I didn't really anticipate how fast they would grow. So what happened was my Cattleya got a little dehydrated. As a result, as you can see, we have a leaf that is curved. Normally this orchid has straight leaves. Generally, when orchids start to produce curved leaves, it means dehydration or a lack of particular nutrients due to dehydration. I'm a little bit more inclined to go with lack of water, but I think both possibilities are valid. So as you can see, dehydration not only manages to disturb the leaf formation, but also bud formation. And since it is something I caused, it's also something that I can fix. So I inspected the sheath a little bit and I think I can remove it with my fingers. I don't need to cut anything. And P.S. it's that time of the year when it's really hot, so my AC will start running in my videos from now on. Keep that in mind. Sorry for the noise. Now my sheath is joining at this point. This is also the point where I can easily remove it. So I will try to be as gentle as possible, grab it from both sides and simply pull. And that's all I need to do. So now my bud is free and let's take a look at it. As you can see, it's already starting to open, but I think the bud will be a little mangled this year as well. That's okay, learned my lesson. So even with Cattleyas, which supposedly are more tolerant to drought, be careful not to dehydrate them. If you're not gonna put the orchid in danger, you might have some anomalies of the sorts. Next up we have a Vanda orchid and her weird behavior when it comes to root production. Now Vanda orchids are monopodial orchids and they produce roots from somewhere on the stem. Vast majority of roots will be towards the base obviously, but they can also be produced further up on the axis. Now usually Vandas will produce roots way below where they can actually bloom. Towards the top of the plant, they are more prone to produce flower spikes. And usually flower spikes are never produced at the base, and roots tend to be produced much lower than where a flower spike should arise from. But what do we have here? A root starting to grow pretty close to the top of the plant. And not only, we also have a flower spike emerging from the very same place. Now this is something Vandas don't generally do. I don't really find it to be very odd, but it is rather curious because I don't have any roots forming lower on the stem. It's just way up here. There is actually a group of Vandaceous orchids that produce roots really close to the crown of the orchid, but these are the Renantheras. And what I'm showing you right now is a Vanda denisoniana. It's not even a hybrid. And I am pretty sure it is a denisoniana because it already bloomed, it had a flower, which I saw. And not only is the root way too up for how this orchid commonly grows, it is also producing a flower spike from the very same place. But at least the placement of the flower spike is normal. Now, does this mean this orchid is stressed? Actually, no. She is in very good condition. She has a tremendous amount of roots, also has growing tips. She looks very, very healthy. In this case, I presume it's just a little anomaly. Now, do we need to cut anything? No, absolutely not. This root is not damaging anything actually. It's not even impairing the flower spike due to its position. Roots can come from anywhere on the axis. They don't necessarily sprout from the joint of the leaves. Therefore, it has been produced closer to the middle of the axis, while the flower spike is always produced from the joint of the two leaves. So the placement of the two don't really bother each other. So what will happen next? Well, this root will continue to grow. I will care for it since it's not damaging anything and it only helps the orchid. But just for the record, it is the very first Vanda that ever does this to me. And I really suspect it's uncommon. But as you can see, not impossible. Next curious orchid is my Catasetum type orchid, and this is a cross between the Pileatum pyrcret and expansum. Now, a while back I was telling you that this orchid is creating a flower spike. Usually these orchids do produce flower spikes when the pseudobulb is not completely mature yet. So when I saw this growing, I thought, yay, flower spike. But behold, it is actually another growth, another distinct pseudobulb that sprouted from the existing maturing pseudobulb. Now, this is not extremely common with Catasetum orchids, but if I'm not mistaken, I think I heard something similar from one of my viewers a few years back. Normally though, Catasetum orchids do not do this. They usually completely mature a pseudobulb and then they go through their dormancy, or not, in some cases they don't, and afterwards they start working on another pseudobulb. In this case, however, as you can see, my orchid looks pretty well. The pseudobulb is still growing, is not mature, yet it produced a new growth that is starting to produce roots of its own. On this side, I have another small nubbin that is just plumping up right now. Whether this will be a flower spike or a pseudobulb, at this point I'm not entirely sure because I was already wrong with that guy. Now in this case, I cannot really pinpoint it on stress factors necessarily. However, there is a small chance it is due to stress, even though the orchid completely doesn't show it. It's not shriveled, the new growth is developing nicely, it will grow pretty tall. However, this is one of those Catasetums that I over-fertilized and I managed to kill off a few of the new roots it produced this year. So there are two possibilities. Either I provided so much nourishment that it decided, hey, I'm just gonna grow some more structures because I have resources. Either I stressed it a little bit and it went into survival mode. The more structures, the more roots, the better. I did manage to do this to a few other Catasetum orchids, but they're not behaving in this way. So generally, Catasetums don't usually do this, not even under stress conditions. Since I fixed the issue, and if you missed the video, I'll link you down below, I suspect everything will be just fine and the roots of this new growth will not burn. So far, so good. They're actually not burned and they're growing inside the medium. So I will end up having two growths with the possibility of blooming and also more roots, which is not necessarily bad, but who knows what surprises this orchid has in store for me. The Catasetum, though, is not the only case that I have with double growths, let's call them like that. The orchid you see right now is the Compactum hybrid, which, if you don't remember, I massacred while repotting. I suggest you do watch that video, I'll link it down below, because it's pretty funny. Or at least if you just want to see me completely fail, you should watch that video. So what happened next was that the separated or individual pseudobulbs started to create growths of their own, and the entire orchid went into complete growth mode. It also managed to bloom, and look how pretty she looks. Everything is going great. However, I have the same situation happening. This growth right here, which by the way, it's not a keiki, it's a basal growth, has started to work on a new growth of its own. And this pseudobulb is nowhere near mature. It's actually pretty young. I suspect it will grow taller than this, maybe not as tall as the other pseudobulbs due to the stress, but definitely much taller than this. And new growths sprouting at this stage are really uncommon, even for Dendrobium orchids. But yet again, I can only assume this is a stress response. This double growth comes from one of the pseudobulbs I actually separated. And although it has created a root system and the orchid is starting to get hydrated, I think what's happening here is the orchid trying to make up for the lost roots. Because in the end, maybe energy will be less to create bigger pseudobulbs, but enough to create a better root system. So in this case, I can totally say it is a stress response. So extrapolating, maybe in the case of the Catasetum orchid, it's about stress as well. However, generally on a normal healthy plant, this should not happen. So these are the cases for today. I hope you've enjoyed them. Last time we discussed about similar things. We saw a self-pollinating orchid, which is now maturing the seed pod. We also saw a double-crowned oncidium. Pretty interesting things, and I don't think they're over. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of things to show and to talk about as time goes by. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. But if you really enjoyed it, give this video a thumbs up. A share is always wonderful, and if you'd like to watch regular orchid and plants videos from me, simply subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye! The lifespan of this flower is really short, and I have a suspicion it comes from the Dowiana, because as far as I know, the Dowiana only lasts for about, I don't know, a week. So this flower lasted me for about 2 weeks, and as the flower aged, it lost its color. I still love the orchid and I'm looking forward for future flowers because she is a fast grower, but oh no, only 2 weeks for this beautiful flower. It's such a shame.